Welcome into the Four Verticals Podcast, episode 121, 121 here for August 21st. And I'm getting some feedback on my computer here. Let me stop that just for a second. There we go, close that. I got some feedback there in my headphones. I forgot I had the other tab open with me talking there, so apologies for that. But yeah, here we are, episode 121. Here for again August 21st, 2025. High atop yet again, sort of moist, if you will. Let me rephrase that. In weather terms, moist and very humid in Jacksonville, Florida. Some dry air yesterday because of Hurricane Aaron, which is safely passing to the east of us, far to the east of us. But we're I guess the good thing about that is that it's bringing in some drier air, or brought in some drier air for the last couple of days. But as it's moving away, that dry air is going away, and the thunderstorm chances are back again. So welcome back after a couple of days break. So I guarantee you, like I've said before, after an hour or so after we're done doing this, recording this, and filming this, it's turning to be a disaster later here in northeastern Florida, southeastern Georgia. So yeah, as per usual in these summer months. But a lot of things to talk about today on today's show. We have finally gotten to the point we were picking our conference champs, also some sleeper teams to just keep an eye on. Of course, we're not choosing everyone. It's not, we're not going to do an entire Kucherov teams today because we've already done our season previews and we're kind of wrapping that up, if you will. Sort of with the college teams today, we have two ones. One of them I purposely saved until today, or I guess I kind of forgot a little bit. The other one I totally forgot, which was Oregon. I thought we did do them, but I don't think we did. At least on my sheet, if you want, my Word document, it says we haven't done Oregon yet. So there we go. But we are finishing up the record projection series for college teams, and we will eventually do the Buccaneers probably the week before the Atlanta game, the first Atlanta game, because again in the NFL you play your divisional teams twice. So the first Atlanta game on the road, that week on that Tuesday we'll do our season projection, I guess, record projection for them. So that's when we'll properly conclude it. But we are finishing up today. There's a couple teams I wanted to get in here, like Illinois and Nebraska. I think were two ones I wanted, but unfortunately we couldn't fit everyone in. So unfortunately we will have to leave those out, unfortunately. So hopefully we get to them next year. But yes, we got conference championship picks, record projections for Oregon, Notre Dame. We also have a question, if you will, about head coaches returning to college football, coaches who have been out of the game for a little bit, who want to come back, and even a coach who is not necessarily considered a college football coach or doesn't have a massive resume in college football, but has been very vocal about that. We will touch on that here in a little bit. If you're new here, of course, we do this show twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays. And speaking of Thursdays, a week from today, we're definitely not going to have a live show, but we may have something pre-recorded. We'll see, but more than likely no live show Thursday. So that means that our Tuesday show will be, of course, the mega, super big, we use whatever adjective or want to describe it. Our big week one celebration, if you will, I guess, for week one, all the picks and upset alerts and whatnot for week one. We'll be doing that on Tuesday's show. So we'll be combining. We usually do the upset alerts on Thursday, but since Thursday's show live and probably no recorded one, we're going to do, it's going to be a longer show than usual, probably. So there'll be a lot of things to cover then. So, and of course, reaction to this past weekend probably as well. I think that's where we're going to do it. Or we may do something Saturday. We'll see. I'll let you guys know if we're going to hop on live on Saturday or not. Yeah, that's something you may try to experiment as well. But yeah, a lot of things to discuss here. So that's a little bit of a note for next week because, it's, Labor Day weekend. A lot of things are happening. Of course, I'll be watching the games, but I may not be able to do a Thursday show either recorded or live. So I'll let you guys know about that. But programming stuff out of the way. And of course, it should go back to regular schedule besides any hurricanes or whatnot. But yeah, so a large show today in terms of things to talk about, things that I'm very excited to get into finally. It's been a long time to be able to get excited about college football. To this standpoint, it's almost like the season's here, but I'll be here on this Saturday. I'll be here next week. So I'm gonna get some water real quick, and we'll properly get ready to begin predicting. And again, if you are listening to this live, welcome into the show. Just be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel, like the streams and videos, whatnot. Spotify, same thing. Make sure to follow me on X, Twitter. A lot of things to follow us on. So make sure to keep track of everything we're talking about. And of course, I'll be live tweeting probably during the games this weekend and next week and throughout the season. And of course, be sure to subscribe and whatnot. And this show's all free. I don't never talked to an advertiser before. If it's an advertiser I trust, like a brand that actually I do use, maybe, but mainly we're independent media here, so I don't have to worry about us being tied to a media company. So there's that. Conference championship predictions. This is something I've been really waiting on to get to. We wanted to sort of do the majority of our team record projections, but again, we have two more that, one of them I just forgot, the other one I saved because it's an independent team and Notre Dame, so they don't fit here in the conference championship predictions. But Oregon, unfortunately, was sort of a bit of a I don't know what you call like an issue of that, but as you will see, they're not really going to play into this, I guess. So it's kind of a spoiler for what I think of Oregon, but so it's going to work. We're going to do all the conferences, the major P4, no G5 or whatnot, unfortunately. But we'll do the two best teams, and we'll do a sleeper team, maybe a team that folks aren't talking about them or aren't considering them for being a title contender. I know we're mostly audio on YouTube and Spotify, but as you can, if you were here, you would see my eyebrows raised here because I think that some of these teams are shocking. I think one of them will be pretty shocking. There's two. There's one, and then there's the other that may not be as shocking, but you'll see what I'm talking about. But so we'll do the two top teams in the conference champ and the championship game. Then we'll do the sleeper teams, like the surprise team, and also again no G5s and no Pac-12. Unfortunately, they are essentially a G5 conference now. So unfortunately, because of TV networks and conference realignment, we can't do the Pac-12 anymore. Well, if we had a show back then, we would have, but fortunately, we cannot do them, or at least it won't be included on here. Let's just start out. We'll go from, I guess, I had the best to the worst, I guess. This is how it's actually labeled on my sheet. So the SEC. Talks about the SEC this summer, the previews and predictions and all this, that, and the other. I think it really boils down to, you may have heard this on Tuesday's show, sort of preview this a little bit. I think Alabama's going to make it to the ACC championship game. They are. They're a really good team. Yes, even though Jan Miller's going to be out for a little bit, I don't care. They should be okay in terms of having enough talent there. The secondary should be amazing, and probably the first time in over 10 years. Go back to 2016, 2015 when they were scoring non-offensive touchdowns on defense. That could be in play for Alabama. I know you can't predict that, but I think there's a good chance they could. You see it here. I'm smiling here because I really am excited to see this Bama team flex their muscles defensively. I mean, they have a really good defensive staff there. They have the former head coach of Buffalo and South Alabama, Kenwell Mack from South Alabama. I think it's Maurice Lundquist from Buffalo, who I've actually seen in person before. Yeah, I think that brain trust there for Bama. Of course, you have the offensive kid on the board. Ryan Grubb, sort of those, the brains and the brawns coming back together. You have Type Simpson, who should be more consistent, more of a reliable quarterback there. I think the receiver room is obviously really, really good. I mean, Ryan Williams, so they should be there, I think. I think a lot of folks are kind of pushing back on that. A lot of folks think Georgia should be there. Of course, they've upgraded their receiver room a little bit. Still a mystery at running back. We'll see. Offensive line should be the key there. If Georgia were to make it, right? That's something that's echoed a lot from a lot of places. But to me, I trust Bama. I trust Kalen DeBoer. And I think they'll be there. Now, the team they will be facing is not a team that they face this year. It's not the team and coaching staff they faced a couple of years ago in Sark, but they don't face them. They haven't faced them yet in the ACC as conference members yet. They think they will next year. So they'll face Texas with Arch Manning, all the hype there, of course, and all the publicity that we'll be getting, and of course they will have been a very battle-tested team. They've played at this point Georgia, Florida on the road. They want to face Ohio State week 1, the game of the century for some folks next weekend. So they'll be battle-tested. I think, and I agree with Bud Elliott here in terms of the SEC and who's going to win it. I just think, much like him, that you're going to have to need a special quarterback to get you above the other teams and win it. Special meaning a kid who's going to play in the NFL. So if you want to go down the list of other quarterbacks, guys I don't think are going to really fit that caliber, Jackson Arnold, no. John Mateer, probably not. Lenore Sellers, no. DJ Lagway, yes, he fits that category. Of course, Bama with Ty Simpson and LSU of Nussmeier, yes, they're on there. They'll be on there as well. Georgia's unique because they have good talent around them, but in terms of a unique quarterback that they have that special NFL type quarterback, no. So that one's a bit of a special case there. But in terms of teams that can win it, of course, it'd be like those group of teams. And then you also have Texas and Bama. So I do think it will be Texas, Bama in the SEC and Atlanta this year. And I do believe Bama wins it. I think going back to what Josh Pate said on his preview season, I guess the grand season preview on Sunday's show, that I feel like Kalen DeBoer's record against the combination of like Kirby Smart, Dan Lanning, Sark, he's undefeated. He's never lost. And I think that's a big deal. Now, of course, you can make the argument, well, duh. I mean, he's only playing them a small amount of time. Eventually, he's going to lose them. And that might be true, right? Bama could very easily go to Athens this year and lose. No big deal. That wouldn't surprise me. But knowing Kalen DeBoer's track record and the fact that he has a winning record, at least at this point, albeit a very small pool, but it's an impressive pool of data, that he's undefeated versus those coaches. So why would I back off Bama beating Texas? Texas can do it. They have a ultra superstar quarterback. They have a good roster. Yes, there's some concerns for certain aspects of it, and of course, but all these teams I mentioned here, any team, frankly, in college football, they all have flaws. They may not have all of them exposed after week one. Maybe in later weeks they will, but they all have flaws. Of course, they'll be exposed at different points in the first couple of weeks, but I just think Bama is a better team. I think defensively, in terms of an entire group of skill position units, they've also, of course, done a really good job in recruiting. And when DeBoer was hired, of course, the whole stick was, oh, you can't recruit as Brian Harsin 2.0. He's a Husky Harsin, as they called him. Well, went into the league last year and he beat Georgia. Yes, it sort of got off the rails a little bit after the Vanderbilt game, but in terms of recruiting, I mean, it's not terrible for a guy from the Pacific Northwest and coach at Sioux Falls. So I think Bama's going to win the SEC, and I think they will probably secure the number one overall seed in the playoff. If we were doing that today, which we're not, but I guess these are sort of semi-quasi playoff predictions. Yeah, I think Bama, if they were to do this, they would be the number one overall seed. I think Penn State, if they were to win it, or Ohio State or Oregon in the Big Ten, I think they would have an argument for that. But I think because of the SEC bias, that being sort of programmed in to everyone, including me, I guess. Yeah, Bama, if they were to win the SEC, number one overall seed, cool, good, no big problem. As for a sleeper team here, there's a lot of teams I could put here. Florida was one I considered, but Florida's not a sleeper. They're being slept on by some folks, or at least, well, maybe slept on not so much, because they're ranked in the poll, and of course they're ranked in our internal poll. And also in the power rating world, they're up in the top 10, I believe, if I recall from Josh Pate's show. Was it Tuesday's show or the show before? So, yes, they are. It's not that they're being slept on. I think they're just not being respected enough. And of course, you have injury thing with like that Lagway and some other stuff they're dealing with as well. That's concerning. That's why they're on here. LSU, same thing. Kind of like them in Florida are basically the exact same team. Injuries are a concern if they can stay healthy. The depth behind those starters are not as good. That's where they're not on here. Oklahoma could very easily be on here, but then again, they're not really being slept on. I think it's more of a respect thing. Georgia, ditto. I think the sleeper team, the team that no one's talking about, is the other team from Texas and College Station. Bryan College Station, as they say. Texas A&M. They have a very good offensive line coming back, one of the best in the country. They have Mike Elko, who has done a very good job of, roster, not only doing roster retention, but also going in the portal, getting the KJ Concepcion, I believe, from NC State, good receiver for them. I know they missed out on the Micah Hudson guy, who was there for like parts of spring, then he left. Now he's back at Texas Tech again. But of course, the question I think of A&M is the quarterback, right? Marcel Reed. You didn't bring him the SEC media days. I know that's not the end all be all, but definitely a bit of a okay. Weird. Normally, if you're a team that's confident in your quarterback, you would bring them. But all right, cool. But definitely interesting, I guess. And just an observation. Not just me saying that. Two other folks have brought that up too. But I think A&M, the whole thing of the offensive line, the O-line being the strength of the team, the receiver room kind of got upgraded. I like Mike Elko. I like Colin Klein, both when he was a quarterback at Kansas State and as an OC. I just think they're a team that no one's thinking about. They're kind of throwing away, and they have some opportunities too. They get Florida coming to their place. I know they go to Texas this year. They go to Austin for the first time in like a billion years, it feels like. They miss out on playing Bama. They miss out on playing Georgia. I believe they play LSU on the road, so that's going to be tough. But, I just think that they have real potential to surprise some folks in a lot of ways. And it gets started early. They get Notre Dame on the road on week 2. So how about that? Just to think about, right? Who knows? What if A&M were to beat Notre Dame and they're 2-0 and they're all the way skyrocketing up to the top 25, probably top 10 team, and I think a lot of folks would be very, very stunned to see that. Big Ten time. This one could have gone a lot of ways too. I think a lot of folks believe, or at least somewhat believe, that we will probably get some version of like Penn State, Ohio State, or Oregon. 2 of those 3 teams facing off against each other, any sort of combination there, which is, I think, fair to say. I think those are at the cream of the crop in the Big Ten. If you go down the layers, you have like, I guess Michigan, Iowa, probably. I think they should be a little bit better this year. There's some other teams as well. USC is sort of a team that folks are kind of a bit of a mystery. You guys know me. I've been a very big James Franklin defender. I'll just say it. I think he's the most disrespected coach in college football. I think the heat that he has gotten over the years, whether it's from the college football media or just the national talking NFL heads who don't watch the sport at all, they just fly by and go, "Oh yeah, Ohio State, Michigan, cool, I'll watch that." Oh, South Florida, UCF, ugh, I can't watch that. That's gross. And of course, you have the guys on Fox last year were saying, "Oh, Penn State, James Franklin, you had the conversation with him after the playoff loss, you guys know what I'm talking about." And unfortunately, it's coming from a show that I do respect. Just one person on there who's a guest on that show who I disagree with a lot, but yeah, I just think James Franklin's a lot of shit thrown on him. Let's just call it what it is, and I think it's disappointing. As much as everyone wants to tout, big old SEC and whatnot, James Franklin coached at Vanderbilt. He did some stuff there. He won an average of 8 games per year, got them in the top 25. A lot of places, they build you statues for that. I think he deserves one there at Vanderbilt. I think a lot of folks kind of forget that. And, of course, his time at Penn State, nothing short of insane after what happened with the whole scandal thing with Sandusky and Paterno. O'Brien goes to the NFL. He comes in and immediately, well, not like necessarily immediately, but I think you can tell if you go back in time, if you're there to watch that, like me, you can tell, yeah, this Penn State program is some fight there. Yes, it's, the scandal and whatnot's still there, but even me back then was like, what, in a couple of years, Penn State could be a decent team, and here they are now. They're a team that we're talking about now nationally again. And that's great for college football to have Penn State be relevant once again. And I think a lot of folks can appreciate that. I think, with, ring culture and all that, it's, don't have a ring all year, suck. You might as well get sent to Gitmo. It's like, yeah, good job, guys. Yeah, that's the rhetoric you want to sound there for college football. So, as a Penn State defender, James Franklin defender, I think I really have the right to do so. I just think this team, I will say this, and this is where I'll meet some of the flybys halfway, but I won't go too extreme like they will. I think for Penn State, and I think you can see where I'm going here with my pick here. If Penn State and this team is very much so loaded, they got the quarterback, Drew Allard, every year. I know a lot of folks like to shit on him. He's fine. There's nothing wrong with him necessarily. The running back room with Ketron Allen, Singleton, those guys could have gone to the NFL draft last year. They would have been high draft picks, probably first round easily. They decided to come back. They paid up, and they decided to come back. And I think it's sort of like that Michigan a couple years ago, Ohio State last year, for a lot of those core pillars. Decided to, you know what? I could go to the NFL. I could make a lot of money, but I could also go to college and say, hey, I won a national championship. That's my college football resume. And I think that's a big thing for college football these days with the portal and NIL and revenue sharing, where you will be seeing less and less of this. I think Penn State definitely is that sort of the last of a dying breed of teams that stick together and teams that are built on recruiting classes, and all they need is maybe some pieces here and there and they can win. And I think they did that similar to what Ohio State did last year. A little bit like Michigan, but I don't think Michigan used the portal a whole lot under the old regime. But I mean, they upgraded at receiver room. Josh Pitt was just there a couple of days ago. Very impressed from what I can tell from what he said. At least that's the vibe I got. They upgraded there. Quarterback room, good. With Aller, I guess injury, I guess would be the concern here if he can stay healthy, which I think he should. The running back room should be fine. And I think the point I'm trying to make here is where I wouldn't meet these folks, the fly-by NFL casuals, is that I do understand, yes, if this season were to, let's just say, fall just a little bit short of where you think they should be at. I think those folks in the state of Pennsylvania and elsewhere, if you're a fan, I don't think those folks would ever forgive James Franklin. I think there would be a angst and anger and definitely a massive, deflating of the happiness level there in Penn State that and there in State College. That I think a lot of folks would never forgive him for wasting the opportunity. So I guess it's in their best interest to do so. Now he's not getting fired. I would totally disagree with that. I know a lot of NFL types will say otherwise, that you should be fired and they should go get someone else who can quote unquote get them over the hump. But all right. So that's my whole defense of Penn State, and I think you can tell where I'm going here. I think Ohio State will be there as well. I know a lot of folks think Oregon should be there, and they believe it will be a rematch of not only last year's Big Ten title game, but a rematch in the regular season because they do play each other pretty early. I don't think so. As you will tell earlier, I think Oregon will sort of shelve that for here in a few minutes. But I think Ohio State will be there. I like their talent. They've attributed the roster retention in pretty well. Yes, the defensive line's a bit of concern. We'll see how that turns out. Yes, there's a lot of names there you don't know about yet, but I think after week 1, especially, you may know some of those names. We'll see. But let's not bury the lead here anymore. I have Penn State winning the Big Ten. Again, I know this sounds like homerism. I know it sounds like defending James Franklin, but I just feel like this team is uniquely built to do this. And look, they may lose to Ohio State, they may lose to Oregon. They could. At least I don't think they will lose both of those games, but they could. I think they could still be there, right? I mean, besides those 2 games, I think there's a very good chance that they could win the rest of them, right? They should be favored in at least 8, I believe, or 8 or 9 of all those games, out of all the games over the season. So I think this is a very real chance of happening, and I think Penn State could do it. And if this were to happen, much like Kirby Smart and Ryan Day before him, folks at this point would. Well, I don't know if they would totally shut up because I think their next line would be, okay, won the Big Ten. Cool, go win the national championship, bud. Like, okay, now we're just moving the goalpost. All of a sudden, it's, oh, you won the big one. Oh, you finally won a big one. Then it's, oh, you have to do the next thing now. And it's like, oh, if you don't do the next thing, you're getting fired. So have fun. So you won't hear that from me. But if Penn State were to do this, congrats to James Franklin. He finally did it again. And, he was just there last year, too. So, that's something we're going to ignore, too. And also he won it 10 years ago or almost 10 years ago with Saquon and those guys and who just won a Super Bowl, the Eagles. So Penn State, I think they're going to win. And how about that for the state of Pennsylvania in 2020, 2025? You have the Eagles win the Super Bowl and then Penn State wins the Big Ten championship and potentially being in the play for the top seed in the playoffs. How about that? Okay, sleeper team. This one could have been a lot of teams. I considered Iowa here. I think they should get improvement from the offense. UCLA could have been on here as well with Nico coming in and some of the things we were hearing with the staff changes that Deshaun Foster has made there has been very good. Though you guys know, I was much as a James Franklin defender, I've kind of been a bit of a defender of Eric Bieniemy. I don't think he's a bad coach. It just didn't work last year. I thought it would have worked a little bit, but so they made the changes this past off. After the season was over and in the winter, they made the changes, bringing in a new staff. I think they brought the OC from Indiana. So he's there. So that could be interesting. Of course, USC could be on there. Michigan State, Aiden Childs and Jonathan Smith. Hey, they're just up there too. So it's not like they can't wreck someone's season late in the year. But my sleeper team is Washington. And what's interesting here, I post this on Twitter a little earlier. I feel like no one's talking about them. Yeah, I mean, you had Josh Pate talk about them briefly months ago, but that's it. No one's talking about them. And they get Ohio State early in the year. I don't think a lot of folks realize that Ohio State has to travel to Seattle. They go in Tuskegee Stadium in week 4 or 5. Ohio State could lose that game. There's no doubt in my mind that they could lose that game. Go ask Michigan. Go ask your enemies over there in Ann Arbor, if you would even do that, and say, hey, yeah, you guys went to Washington last year. Asking about that, So Washington with Damon Williams there. Jet Fish is a very good head coach. Could be, in play for some of these other jobs may open, I guess, towards the end of the season, when we get to like December. One of them, of course, has always been the rumor is, Florida, since he is alum. He's alumni, but I don't know why I brought that up, but yeah, I guess may as well because. But anyway, just without all of that, I just feel like folks are just sleeping on Washington. Again, their schedule. Again, they get Ohio State early, and that's not nothing to sneeze at. That is definitely a losable game. Here, I'll pull it up here, but I had it pulled up before. But so they should really be 3-0. And I know the Washington State game. That is a bit of a treacherous situation there because it's it's on the road. It's the game before. There's no bye week, but besides that game, of course, you get Oregon at the end of the year, and you have to go make several trips out to the Eastern and Central time zone. But it's not that it's unmanageable. Like after Ohio State until Oregon, I guess, and we said Michigan in there too. Besides those three teams, they should be favored in all these games. I don't think a lot of folks realize that. Not to mention, they towards the end of the year they stay on the West Coast. From Purdue all the way to Oregon. I know they go to UCLA, but they have to change time zones or anything like that. So travel is very limited after their trip to Wisconsin. So I just think Washington could be a very sneaky team. We said this back one of the first team projections that they could be a very good team this year. I think a lot of folks are sleeping on them. Even some folks in the national media are sleeping on them, and I disagree with that. I think they I think the folks in Seattle would agree with me that, hey, let's keep this, quiet. It's, they get, again, they're two G5s. Don't lose to Washington State. That's one thing I would say the Jet Fish company. Just do not overlook them. Because, again, I know everyone's looking at the Ohio State game and it's like, this big shiny thing. But it's like, just don't ignore Washington State here. Let's not bury the lead here. Let's not look, get ahead of ourselves. So just don't lose to them. Because that's an upset. That's a classic, booby trap. Grenade on the floor, camouflage, you step on that, boom, you're dead. So, yeah, I think Washington very much so being slept on, and I think they can make some noise here in the Big Ten. Again, that Ohio State-Washington game, Ohio State going to Seattle. Be careful. ACC time. Talk about a conference that's a bit of a mess. These last few. The Big 12, yeah, it's a fun mess, but, man, the ACC is it's a crappy conference, man. I don't know what's really say about it. I mean, and we're not getting into the whole conference realignment stuff and knowing that this whole thing's going to implode here in a few years. But as long as it's still here, we'll talk about it. Just like the Pac-12. If we were doing our show 3 or 4 years ago, we haven't probably been saying the same thing. But hey, we're going to talk about it. So I think the team that everyone's picking to win the conference. Let's not bury the lead here. It's Clemson. Clemson. I think Dabo. This year is uniquely being built to being a year where Clemson can pop. They haven't done it in a few years since Trevor and all of them back in 2020. Trevor Lawrence and all of them, since all of those core guys left and now are playing the NFL. It's been tough times. They've been to the conference championship game. They've won it a couple of times. It's not been the same though. It's Clemson, but it's not the Clemson we know. And the sort of comparison I use for Clemson is go look at the MCU and Marvel right now. Marvel and Clemson very much on similar wavelengths, and which is kind of very similar wavelengths. So literally the timelines of each of these entities, both having success, failure, and opportunities to come back, are very, very similar. But as for Clemson, again, they have they sort of built this year up to be in a year where they have everything coming together. The receiver room's been built up. Kate Klum, Garrett Riley, that marriage there, if you will, at least from a working marriage, if you will, a working relationship. That's going pretty well so far. He's still there. Defense with Tom Allen should be better as the year goes on. I think early in the year you may see some adjustments being made because it's new language being brought in. But I think towards the end of the year you should be seeing a better product there. Of course, they get LSU early at home, so that helps. But their only question there with Clemson, and I may have. Trying to think, do we do a Clemson preview? I don't think we did. That's another thing too. We just forgot, but whatever. We're not changing that now. But yeah, for Clemson, that's the only concern I would have with them is running back. They're starting the Randall kid who was like a receiver last year. It's like okay, cool. So I think everyone's thinking about Clemson as the team that will be there and they'll probably win it. I have them winning it, but who's going to play them? And who's going to be there in Charlotte? Is it is going to be Miami. Carson Beck, very attractive there in terms of the potential. Yeah, sure, it's off the field issues and the leadership questions with him. Yes, the new turnover there of the staff there in Miami. They should be an interesting team to watch, but that's not a team I'm thinking about. I've also mentioned Louisville as another team that could be in this mix. Louisville, a very favorable schedule. Team that with Jeff Brom and sort of the new talent pieces they have coming in or coming back. That's a team that I think a lot of folks sort of like watching or kind of, sort of flying over. But I think the folks in Louisville there and Brum and the company would probably prefer you to keep it quiet. But the team, I think Georgia, not Georgia, they played Georgia last year. The team that I think Clemson will face is a rematch. And it's Georgia Tech. Sort of going along with other folks, I think Georgia Tech's a team that should be getting a lot of attention, and I think they are now. But we literally just did the Georgia Tech preview like weeks ago. I don't need to repeat myself, but like their staff, like the fact that they know who they are. Yes, losing Singleton hurts, and maybe it doesn't hurt as much as you think it does, but I think it's certainly an interesting. It's an interesting aspect to this team to see how they look without him, because he was great for them last year, and this is a rematch too. These two teams play each other in about a month, to start off ACC play there in Atlanta. So, this could be this could be interesting to see this rematch happen. So I have Clemson winning it. The sleeper team here, man. Again, I could have. I don't know why I'm doing this to myself. I really thought about putting Virginia on here potentially. They've done some good stuff in terms of retaining players. And yes, I know they lost Calandry, but I don't think anyone's really shedding a tear over that. But they've had just so many injuries, man. I just couldn't do it. I could have put Syracuse on here potentially. Pitt could have been on here. But again, the ACC, man, it's just you get to the top layer teams and you get to the middle of the layer and the bottom layer, and it's just the wasteland. So my sleeper team, and I can't believe I'm actually doing this again, is Florida State. I'm falling for it again. It's Florida State. I think Florida State. Just follow me on here. Yes, I know the Bama game seems really scary. Yes, you could. I think it could very much still look like what happened to you when you faced Clemson back in 2018 at home, and it was a total disaster. Yes, that may happen week one. Yes, it may look atrocious, but yes, I know they struggle to have good cohesion offensively in the spring because guys are out and some of those guys weren't even on campus yet. I get that. Yes, I know the installation of the offense has been rough. I just think with Gus Malzahn being there, Mike Norvell, knowing that, this is, they're in desperation mode, right? I just feel like that they have decent enough talent there, and having Tommy Castellanos being there and knowing and just being the best version he is. And, I kind of much prefer he doesn't talk about the NFL and whatnot. He's not going to the NFL. Just say what it is. I think the talent they have, they're decent enough talent. The ability to maybe surprise some teams in ACC. Just ignore Bama for a second here. If you lose that game, closer, a blowout, whatever, you can't lose the team. I think that's pretty clear. And you can't literally lose to teams like, Virginia and, Virginia Tech and teams like that. You just can't. If you do that, then your team's in a spiral and your team's having a mutiny. I don't think it's going to happen again. I think I see it very hard to have this happen twice. I think the talent that Florida State brought in is good enough. I think Florida State could be a sneaky team here. Not winning the league, no. Making it to like a bowl game plus 8 wins, 7 wins. Yeah, they could. So I'm taking a flyer on Florida State, and I don't feel good about it, but we're doing it. So I can't change it now. We're live and we're recording this on Spotify as well as we're doing this. So yeah, I have Florida State being the sleeper team, Clemson, Georgia Tech, and Charlotte for the ACC championship game. I think Clemson wins it. And of course, yes, there are other teams I could consider here making it to the ACC championship game. Miami being one of them. But just too many questions there for Miami this year to make it. But yeah, again, I shoot my wagon to Florida State. It's not wise, and yes, I don't feel good about it. But look, I don't. Who else would you put on here? Virginia Tech? Not really. Wake Forest? No. Stanford? Nah. Cal? No. Ugh. So. SMU and maybe, but SMU, we know what SMU is, right? We know who Raj Lashley is, and they're not necessarily a sleeper. So I fish my mind in the Florida State again. And look, we may look at this back in December and go, boy, that was stupid, or that was smart, right? So Big 12 time, the best, as Josh Pate calls it, America's College Football Conference. as we talked about on Tuesday during the Kansas State Iowa State preview, I'm very high on Kansas State. I think Kansas State could be the best team, or one of the best teams in the Big 12, or at least a team that has separated themselves, right? Arizona State, Kansas State, Texas Tech, they've kind of separated themselves in the pack a little bit. Utah could be one of them as well. But I think Kansas State with Avery Johnson, Chris Kleiman, the whole coaching staff there is very good, very veteran. I think they'll be in the Big 12 championship game. They'll be in Dallas. And the team they face, again, it could be a lot of these teams. Could be anyone. The folks in Stillwater, probably not really. The folks in Tucson, not really. I guess everyone else, I guess the folks in Boulder, probably not. But everyone else besides them is fair play. But I think it's going to be Texas Tech. I just think with the pressure on Joey McGuire and sort of the theory out there is, look, if they have another 8-win season, they fail to capitalize on this expensive roster, he gets the boot. They bring in someone else to actually manage it a lot better. Which, look, I understand why you feel that way. I get it. There's a lot of pressure on McGuire to, fulfill on the promise here and fulfill on the payment, if you will, on this team. As they say, unfortunately, the bill comes due, and I think sure, look, if they don't make it to Dallas this year, it could get pretty ugly there in Lubbock in terms of people not being there next year. So I think it's in their best interest to get it done. I think they will. Yes, they have injury concerns with, they just lost your running back. Brent Morin's, as Bud Elliott says, he's made out of glass. He's, always an injury tent once per game. So I don't feel as good as I did maybe months ago. But just because of the pressure, the fact that you bought your roster, I think if you're a Texas Tech booster like, Cody Campbell, or just a fan or alumni, you want to see your return on investment. And I think they need to see it. So I have them have these two teams in Dallas, and I have Kansas State winning the league. I just have a lot of trust in Avery Johnson in this roster. I think they have is very unique to do some things in the Big 12. I think a lot of teams are incapable of doing. Yes, defensively, are they the best? No. Do I think they'll have a lot of close games? And certainly, could they lose a few games this year? Yes, absolutely. But doesn't mean they can't make it to Dallas. Teams I considered for being in here, Utah is one I talked about the other day. They could be on here. Most mainly my sleeper team, but we've already talked about them. So that's a team that anyone who at least listens to this show, you're aware of. Arizona State could have easily been here, but you lose a lot of course from that team, especially Camp Scatteroo. That's tough to replace, man. Yes, I know they still have Sam Levitt. Yes, I know they have Kenny Dillingham still there, and that coaching staff is still intact. And I like a lot, that's out there over there in Tempe, but I don't know, man. It's tough. It really is tough. And I think in a league where it's literally just a slot machine, and it's, if you want to use that analogy, or if more of a morbid analogy, it's like Russian roulette, right? You put the revolver in, take the revolver out, go through all the chambers and see what's in there. You don't know what you're going to get in the Big 12. And I think that's why I'm going on a limb and saying Texas Tech will be there. I don't think it will be a team that was there last year and the conference championship will make it back. I find that hard to believe, and I could be wrong on that. So that's why I'm putting it out there for Arizona State. Baylor could be on here as well. That's another team I thought about. Another team that could be very much on here is Iowa State. And they played each other this weekend, right? In about 48 hours or so. And over in Ireland. So that could be a rematch. That could be possible. But then again, as I mentioned on Tuesday, the whole wide receiver thing, and it's just I don't feel comfortable with the fact of having to replace so many guys who went drafted or undrafted. I think for a place like Iowa State, that's kind of a big deal. So yeah, I think it'll be Texas Tech, Kansas State. I think Kansas State wins, and of course they'll be in the playoff, I believe, if this were to be correct. The sleeper team, again, could have went several ways here. I actually went Kansas. This one's probably going to scratch your heads a little bit, much like the Florida State one. Just hear me out. Lance Leipold's still the coach there. Remember him a couple years ago? They're winning, 8 games or whatever? Like a couple years ago, they're undefeated, playing TCU, the same TCU team that made it to the national championship, and college game there was there, and Big Noon kickoff was there. I don't think it was Gus and Joel calling the game because they're, of course, the Big Ten ties there, right? But, everyone was all there. The College Bowl universe was in Lawrence, Kansas for nothing related to basketball. That whole staff's still there. It's, the same staff that had the upset over Oklahoma a couple years ago. So they're all still there. Lance Leipold's still there. Jalen Daniels is still there. Yes, he couldn't read the defense last year to save his life, but he got better over the year, over the season. And Tuesday say he hasn't gotten better, right? So that's a team that could be a chaos team in the Big 12. Just saying. Do I feel good about it? Not really, but we'll see. So, yeah, conference championship picks, sleeper teams, a lot of fun. That took up like 40 minutes or so already. So, yeah, as you can tell, this will be a long duration show. And we're not done yet. We're still going on. So, I'm going to get some water here, and we will continue here after a little break. Again, if you are new here, make sure to subscribe to the channel, as always, and be sure to follow me on X, Twitter, podcast feed, same thing you're listening on Spotify. This should be out either tomorrow or later today on Spotify. On YouTube, this will be available until the end of time, unless something were to happen. But, yeah, team record projections. We have 2 of them today, 2 for 1 special. The last 2 college ones, again, I'm trying to think. Did we do Clemson one? I think we did. I don't remember. I have to go check. Pretty sure we did. But I'm pretty sure these are the 2 last ones for college. We'll eventually do the Buccaneers once the season gets closer. Yes, I am aware of some of the developing stories there in Tampa with McMillan being out probably for a while, it seems like, after what happened on Saturday. So don't have time to cover it now. We'll probably do that eventually in the future once we get closer. But, yeah, we'll do the Bucs record projection. That'll be the last one for this little mini-series in our show. But for college-wise, we're wrapping it up today with Oregon and Notre Dame. We'll do Oregon first. Just talked about in the Big Ten segment. I do not have them going to Indianapolis this year. They're bringing Dante Moore. Yes, they have a lot of talent coming in, and with some of the new additions of the recruiting and roster retention, and over the past couple of years of Dan Lanning, it's been transfer quarterback, right? It's been older QB, Gabriel last year, and then Bo Nix. This year, they are finally getting someone that is not or at least an older player. It's not Moore. A little bit younger. They're also going to be having to rely on a lot of Dan Lanning recruits, not transfers, recruits. And that's not a bad thing, nor is it a good thing, right? Some of these guys, they may not pan out. We just don't know, right? It's a bit of a mystery in terms of, can we actually see with Dan Lanning the players that he's developed, not players he's taken and, molded after those guys were at over places. It is interesting to see, can he actually develop these guys and make his recruits and sort of mold them and develop them. We haven't seen it yet. Again, that's not a bad thing, but nor is it a good thing either. Again, we just don't know. That's not me knocking Dan Lanning. I have full faith that he is a good recruiter. He definitely is. And look, I'm interested to see what his program looks here and going forward, but this is a mystery, no doubt. And I'm not the only one saying it too. There are folks who are also feeling the same way, where it's something we don't trust Dan Lanning. Is just a little uneasiness, a little nervousness here, a little mystery in terms of what they will look like this year in terms of their younger roster that they've recruited over these years, how they're going to look like. We don't know. So I think that is something we need to establish as well. Receiver room, hurting. They had a guy get dismissed a couple of weeks ago or released away from the team. Evan Stewart can be out for a long time. Their freshman receiver, I forget the kid's name. He should be fairly good, but they're going to need a lot more help than that. Hopefully some guys there step up. Running back room should be okay. Quarterback room feel okay about. Defense, same, should be okay. As long as Dan Lanning is there, it should be fine. Their schedule is interesting. So they play Oklahoma State early in the year. There's no real interest in watching that game unless you just want to watch Oregon, or if you're an Oregon fan, if you're just a fan of college football, or you're sadistic. So they should be 2-0. Then they go to Northwestern. And that's not a game being played at Soldier Field or Wrigley Field. That's actually on the practice field. So is this true? So this is going to be the most high-profile team to ever play there. How about that? At the temporary Martin Stadium on the lake there. And that's also going to be a noon kickoff, too. So that's a 9 Eastern body clock for a lot of those folks on the West Coast. So look, I'm not saying Northwestern's pull off the upset, but just be careful, okay? They don't, let's not get ahead of ourselves here. Then they have another non-con in Oregon State, the rivalry game. I think, is this the last year they're playing them, at least scheduled? So that sucks. Might be the last year they play them for a little bit. Too bad they can't continue it going forward, but hopefully they find a way to do so. Then they get Penn State. And if you really think about it, that's probably the most losable game on this schedule, right? So you have those games. Yes, there's some situational games, like there's the Western game, and there's another game here later on the schedule. I'll get to you actual 2 games on here on the schedule that are concerning schedule and travel wise. But you get Penn State on the road, that's gonna be a tough one. That's definitely. I guess if you were to look at your entire schedule, that's I guess Oregon's Super Bowl in the regular season, at least a game that all of your chips are going to be on the table here. Right? And this is something too that was brought up on Cover 3 yesterday for Oregon, is that for the first like 4 or 5 weeks until the Penn State game, D ain't shown nothing. Like even against Oklahoma State and Northwestern and Oregon State, it's going to be a very vanilla offense. There's going to be a lot of things you'll not be seeing until that Penn State game. So I take that for what it's worth, I guess, of projecting Oregon out far out here. So I guess this disclaimer: don't expect Oregon to be showing a whole lot, at least offensively. Defensively, it's the Oregon scheme of Dan Lanning is not much of a surprise. Offensively, with Will Stein, they're going to be holding some things back in the filing cabinet there, and won't be brought out for until late September. So don't be expecting anything unique on offense for a little bit there for Oregon, which means I would expect some slow starts, probably some sluggishness. And, again, I go point to that Northwestern game on the road. That could be pretty tough for them, especially, an early kickoff. And, it's on the lake, with the lake and being next to the stadium. If you're still in the meteorology nut like me, lake effect winds a real thing. So expect that game to be a little more low scoring than I think folks expect there. So, I guess take the under, if you will, if you were projecting out. But anyway, the other games here that could be tough on the schedule here, Rutgers and Iowa. We don't know for sure if the Iowa game is going to be a noon or a late night game. I don't think it's going to be a late night game because, again, most of the time, the Big Ten typically does not want to have games in November at night because of the weather. So that might be a noon kickoff game. So make it lucky there. But if it's not, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. Just saying, just be careful, Then another one's Rutgers. Yes, the furthest east we're going to have to go this year is to Piscataway, New Jersey. Don't like it. Luckily, it's going to be a later kickoff, I guess, because it's going to be 3 o'clock, 4 p.m. In Eugene. But still, it's I just don't. Just something about that game makes me. Just something about that game. It's just making me kind of think here a little bit. I'm not saying like Rutgers is going to pull off some upset here, but I don't know. Just something about that game makes me concerned for Oregon a little bit. I don't know what it is, but that one might be a little bit sneaky. So based on all that, based on the talent, and again, they have really good. The blue chip ratio, they're way up there in blue chip ratios. So talent wise, they're fine. Again, it really is just, can the players Dan Lanning has recruited, can they actually develop, and can he himself develop them? You haven't seen that yet. I think he can do it, but can he do it? That's the question. Can he do it? The best case for Oregon is 11-1. I think there's a really good case here. They can go for this schedule, with no distractions, and maybe the travel isn't a big factor here. Some of those games going, past the Mississippi River, if you will, to the Eastern and Central time zone. If they're going to do that, navigate those games and lose to Penn State, that's good. The worst case scenario, though, is 8-4. Maybe think to yourself, boy, that's really harsh there. 8-4, that's not impossible. Again, this is a very young team. This is a very greenish team. Not literally green, but it's going to be a very interesting to see. Again, they don't have a veteran quarterback on the roster. Yes, yesterday they may have talent, but none of these guys. Microphone close to the face there. Yes, they have good talent there. Yes, they have Dante Moore and Novosad or whomever, but still, they just the lack of veteranness at quarterback. You having to again rely on a lot of young players and the receivers be mystery there. Running back should be okay. 8-4 is not impossible here. Again, there's a lot of games here you can lose. You could lose to Northwestern on the lake there. You could. That's a potential trap game. Iowa, ditto. USC potentially later in the year. You get them at home, but that's a losable game. Playing the game all the way, in Piscataway, New Jersey, late in the season or middle of the season. That's not easy either. So there's a path here. Worst case scenario, if things really bottom out, 8-4 is probably the worst case scenario, and that's not bad. For a lot of teams, for Oregon, that'll be. I'm not going to say like folks would like chant for Dan Lanning to be fired, but I think if this were to happen here, something like this were to happen here, like if they were to lose to like Northwestern or some of those teams like that, you would have some folks in the industry, like reporters and whatnot, I guess folks like me who do shows. I'll be honest, there'd be a lot of folks who'd be very concerned about this future. And I think a lot of folks who were worried about, Dan Lanning now who happen to rely on developing his own players, not using someone else's product that he improved, I think you'll get some folks who you'll start to get a little worried about, is this going to work? Is this sustainable? Is Dave Lanning just a Muschamp clone? I don't know. We'll see. I don't think he is. He's not. At least I don't think, but we'll see. I think reasonable here is 10-2. Look, again, I think the Penn State game thing they probably will lose, so I guess that's a spoiler for down the road. I think they lose that game. Or at least it's reasonable to think that. I think it's also, again, reasonable they could lose to Rutgers or Northwestern early if they're not careful. Again, before the Penn State game, that Northwestern game being there on the lake and whatnot. That's, again, the fact that Oregon doesn't have to show a whole lot offensively, so they may go more conservative instead of going more liberal in the offense. Or, I don't know if it's the right way to put it. I'm not bringing politics here, but that's, I may not have the best terminology, but if they're not more aggressive instead of going more conservative, so they do go more conservative early in the year, they go more aggressive during the Penn State game. Look, they could be in some fights here. Northwestern, again, on the lake. Again, that's a game I could just imagine in my head being 17-10 in the fourth quarter. Everyone's going, what's happened to Oregon? But then you have people like me and some other industry folks going, it's not surprising here. They're being more conservative. They're saving some stuff for the Penn State game. Not surprising. So 10-2, pretty reasonable aim for worst case, and 11-1 best case there. And their FanDuel number, by the way, is 10.5. Not a sponsor of the show. FanDuel is not, but they are a resource that we use. So 10.5 there. I think that's a little bit under there for Oregon, but that's not bad, all things considered. Last one here. At least the last college team record projection. Notre Dame. Same as Oregon. They're over under from FanDuel is 10.5. Notre Dame, as I said before, and this is something on our spicy predictions, they could start 0-2. There's a real chance they could. Now, the good thing is they can start 0-2 and they can finish the season 10-2. So there's that. They get Miami on the road. That's if you're a Notre Dame fan, I don't know if I want to be bringing CJ Carr, who's the starter, by the way, now, if that's you haven't heard, bringing him into a hostile, it might be a hostile environment there in South Beach. We'll see against a top 10 opponent, according to the AP. So there's that. And now they go out to South Bend. They play. They do end up playing Texas A&M at home. So there's that. So, and then there's a bye week in between, but still there's a, you can start 0-2 there. So that's not impossible. And of course, they go to Arkansas late September, I believe. So, that's not like a losable game, but just it's interesting that's on there. Of course, you have USC put in there as well. And, besides maybe those four teams I just mentioned, USC, Arkansas, Texas A&M, Miami, Notre Dame should definitely be favored. And at the very least, outside of two games, or maybe, I guess, I don't know, they favored against Miami. I have to double check. Of course, we'll do that prediction next Tuesday, but they should be favored at least in all or just about only one of their games they're not favored in. So there's that. Our roster should be okay. They've done well in recruiting. Jeremiah Love's still there. Again, the quarterback thing is interesting. I was listening to Bud Elliott and all those guys yesterday on Cover 3, and they brought up, and Bud at least brought up with his sources from South Bend and from the Notre Dame program, is that the reactions that he got. Now, he didn't say who was saying this. Of course, keeping your sources anonymous for obvious reasons. If you've taken, law and ethics of communication, like I have. From what Bud said, from what he has gotten, he has seen text messages from players that have texted, I guess, sources that he has, not getting the best scoring reviews of CJ Carr. So that's a little concerning that there's some kind of he's the starter kind of energy, like very much of a surprise. Of course, they still have Kenny Minchie. I think Minchie will probably play a role here if in fact that quarterback battle was really close. And if my theory is correct, that there may have been, that may have been the quarterback battle that, Josh Pate was referring to, of the whole cell phone thing, which I'm starting to really believe that was the case. So, yes, they have options there at quarterback for sure. If it's Minchie or CJ Carr, I just don't like the fact that your first two games and the schedule is against two very talented programs. So, there's that. Marcus Freeman, good coach, good staff there. Yes, they've had to make some changes there defensively without Golden moving on to NFL. Albeit he's not that far though, in Cincinnati, the Bengals, but or Bengals, whatever. It's Bengals are something different than Bengals. So yes, you have turnover there at staff. You lose your GM to USC. I mean, that's not a big deal on the field, but I guess it kind of is. But best case scenario here, I believe, is 11-1. I think there is a really good chance that they could lose one of these games, right? The two games start the year, Texas A&M and Miami. And I think after that should be smooth sailing, right? I mean, you get Stanford on the road. That should be a stadium takeover. I don't know. I mean, look, I don't really try not to. I try not to disrespect a lot of these teams, but man, Stanford's going to be the worst P4 team in the country. They play Hawaii this weekend. They're not favored, by the way. Hawaii is favored to win that game, and Stanford could very easily go 0-12 here, or at the 0-12, 1-11. Like, it's that bad. Not to mention they have a coach who has not coached in college football before as interim. So, so for Notre Dame, 11-1 best case. Worst case is 7-5. Again, much like Oregon, seems a little bit extreme, but then again, quarterback consistency here is a question now. Because some of these teams like Pitt, potentially USC, could be a little bit better than you think. Again, what if they do start 0-2, and maybe you get the bad vibes, and maybe there's some warring factions potentially in that locker room. So that's very unlikely to happen. Knowing what I know of Marcus Freeman, he's very much so a player's coach. Keeping the vibes okay. I think a 7-5 total disaster. It's possible. I mean, it's certainly on the table, but it's not very likely. What is reasonable, I think, is 10-2. So what that translates to is there's a real chance they could start 0-2. I wouldn't be too concerned. So if that were, for example, if it would happen in my poll, this little potential avenue here, they won't fall in my poll. They'll still be right in that top 10 range because they're facing quality opponents. So, I think 10-2 is reasonable here. So 11-1 best case, worst case 7-5. I think 10-2 is pretty much what I would go here for Notre Dame. So it's not too bad. If you're an Irish fan. Again, as we sort of wrap up the show here, I have one more little segment, then we'll get out of here. Be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the streams, videos when we do them. Again, I may go live Saturday. If we end up, I may end up going live on Saturday night, maybe doing a reaction to week 0, something we may try to do during the season, especially for all these big weekends. We'll try to do this. Maybe sort of to, alleviate some of the Tuesday shows being super long with a reaction to the past weekend and going into previews in the same show. So may experiment a little bit on that. We'll see. But could do something on the Saturday, more of a surprise stream. So just be on the lookout for that. Check the socials. But just be sure to follow over there too. X, Twitter, Spotify, podcast feed, YouTube. You guys know the drill, right? If you've been doing this for you've been subscribed for a little bit, you should know. Okay, let's see here. Yeah, so this was something that it's been coming up a little bit. So the question that I've supposed here is what coaches could return to college football? Coaches who have sort of been away from college football, maybe they were fired and decided to live out the buyout life and sort of, right off into sunset, or coaches who may be trying to get back in to college football, who may have been there once upon a time. A couple of coaches here I wanted to discuss. 2 of them are more recent college coaches. One is more unique. I think you may know who I'm referring to. So Jimbo Fisher and Ed Orgeron, famously of Florida State, Texas A&M, of Jimbo, and of course Orgeron of Ole Miss and LSU. These 2 coaches are pretty vocal about getting back, and what I think of that. And these guys were to get back in. It's possible. It's not like guaranteeing anything, but I think us seeing Jimbo, and of course, if you don't know, Jimbo Fisher is going to be a part of the ACC Network's TV college football coverage, so he'll be in the studio, I guess. That's pretty cool. I think some of it, and some of that, I guess, unfortunately, has to do with Mark Richt, I think, is he has the health issue, and he might be they might be trying to phase him out a little bit as he's sort of going through what he's been going through. But Jimbo's joining the ACC Network. That was announced about a couple months ago, and he's been pretty vocal. Him and Edo have been very vocal about trying to get back into coaching. Is there a spot for them? Yeah, sure there is. There might be a spot for them. Yes, you can look at both these guys and say, well, with Jimbo's, the offense is too stale, was outdated. Starting to sound like Gordon Ramsay here about when he was doing Kitchen Nightmares, right? He was going to all those failing restaurants, and the menu and the stuff was atrocious, and the restaurant was stuck in like the 90s or whatever. That's kind of what Jimbo Fisher was at Texas A&M. Just very outdated, bland type of team. Recruiting was great. The talent was there, but just both just issues with the offense being bland, and just not to mention the recruits, the character flaws a lot of them had. So there's that. I guess it didn't end well, but there might be a path there. A G5 team potentially. Same with Edo, Coach Orgeron, right? There might be a path for him to get back in. As much as people can clown on him for how he handled LSU after the championship, and everyone comparing him to Gene Chizik, and I think Orgeron, in some ways, and it's not saying much, I think he's a better coach than Gene Chizik. At least he did more before the title team, right? He had the year they lost to Troy, which I still can't believe it's a real thing that happened. Probably the worst LSU loss in my lifetime I'll probably ever experience. That happening, and they did rebound that year. And of course, the year after they went, 10-3 or something like that, 9-3 regular season, a very good year with Joe Burrow's first year there. They went 10-2, I believe, or something like that. So yeah, I think that was wrong. Definitely, better than Gene Chizik. And, look at some of these G5 schools, Tulane of Summerall, if he ends up moving on, which I think he might, who's to say Edo can come back to Louisiana and, start up the gumbo, Coach O, getting back into the swing of things. I don't know if that Coach O, I don't know, impersonation was on point or not, but you guys get the point, right? I think everyone, yes, you can clown on Coach Orgeron for mismanaging the whole LSU thing, not to mention the other off-the-field weirdness of him, but both serious and unserious as it is. But I think as someone who is, a fan of college football, got a soft spot for the old Coach O. I would like to see him come back to college football. Maybe not in the Power 4 conference. I don't think anyone would take a chance on him. But I had a G5, like Tulane or something like that. I could buy into it. I could see it. Now, the other coach that could make his return to college football is someone who has more or less, more notoriety in NFL circles, but did coach in college for a little bit, and that's John Gruden. You're hearing a lot about him. We talked about this a little bit ago, but that's another coach too. Yeah, I could see coming back, and I think it's been exhausted too with the whole off-the-field stuff. And as a Bucs fan, I know generally, I was a little bit younger when that was going on as a youth, but understanding that what was happening here with Tampa and how that ended, there's every coach too that could be coming back. And I think it's interesting too, and it's something that Josh Pate sort of brought up, and I agree. This whole thing about coaches who end up getting fired, right? You have all these options and whatnot, and you could do what Kevin Sumlin did, which was go from A&M and going straight to going to a place like Arizona and destroying that program basically, and just total coaching malpractice. Or you could do what Dan Mullen did and took a route to the TV side of things and build yourself up, right? And like Josh Pate says, it's like when you're on TV and your equity is getting built up, it can go anywhere and then up, right? You're not getting any worse by going on TV. So I don't know, it'll be interesting to see what coaches It'll be interesting to see what coaches end up doing that Dan Mullen path, right? If you're, coach who gets fired, he ends up getting fired like a Hugh Freeze maybe, or Mark Stoops, or, Brian Kelly potentially as well. And these coaches who are, I guess mentioned a lot of them in the SEC, but a lot of them are in the SEC, and it'll be interesting to see when those guys are what did they end up doing, right? Did they go back into coaching? They still have that itch, or did they do, the Dan Mullen path, which I think most coaches probably should be doing, at least me personally, and just taking the TV gig, building up your resume again and building yourself up. So, Jimbo Fisher, Ed Orgeron, any of these coaches who, at least if it makes sense for them to come back or at least are in good standing, I wouldn't be totally against it. So there's that. And that's the show. So, last show. Before the season starts here in about 24 hours or so, 48 hours, I believe, actually. So, so we'll be back on Tuesday for our big, grand week 1 preview and whatnot. A lot of things to discuss there. Again, no show probably Thursday. At least no show live for sure Thursday. Pre-recorded, we'll see. But, so we'll be back maybe Saturday, perhaps, of a surprise show, but a surprise reaction stream. But, unless that doesn't happen, enjoy your week 0. Enjoy the games this week in love. It's not the best week 0 schedule, at least in terms of the menu of games, but there's some interesting sneaky ones, right? You have Kansas, I think is playing. UNLV, speaking of Dan Mullen, I'll be watching and listening. Not Arizona. They did go to Hawaii a couple years ago. Speaking of Kevin Solman, the atrocious game that was. If you're an Arizona fan, but Stanford going out to Hawaii, that could be a very fun game there. Again, Hawaii is the favorite there. So yeah, that's a late night on CBS. So a bit of a throwback to Pac-12 After Dark, or I guess West Coast After Dark, if you will, if you want to use that terminology now. But yeah, so enjoy week 0. Maybe I'll hop on Saturday, late Saturday, maybe early Sunday morning at midnight, potentially do a reaction. Once all the games are finished, maybe we'll see. If not, I'll see you on Tuesday. So until then, enjoy your week 0 games. Enjoy Kansas State, Iowa State, albeit in Ireland. If you're listening over there, have fun. I'm sure the Guinness is flowing over there as it should be. So yeah, until potentially more likely Tuesday, potentially until Saturday, enjoy the games, enjoy your weekend, and we'll see you on the next stream.